Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday, August 4th. Now, I almost always record these videos in the morning, but this Tuesday has just been a busier day than I expected. That's what happens sometimes. So I'm recording this Tuesday evening. And I was very struck by the lectionary passage for today. It comes to us from the book of Deuteronomy, not a book I read particularly often. But there was something that struck me, and then this passage really struck me even more because of some events of today. So I want to reflect on this passage and some of what I experienced today. This comes from Deuteronomy chapter 26. God is speaking through the author of Deuteronomy, and God says, "When you have come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance to possess, and you possess it and settle it, you shall take some of the first of all the fruit of the ground, which you harvest from the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you shall put it in a basket and go to the place that the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name." And then, skipping ahead many verses, to verse 11. "Then you, together with the Levites and the aliens who reside among you, shall celebrate with all the bounty that the Lord your God has given you in your house. And when you have finished paying all the tithe of your produce in the third year, which is the year of the tithe, giving it to the Levites, the aliens, the orphans, and the widows, so that they may eat their fill within your towns, then you shall say, before the Lord your God, I have removed the sacred portion from the house, and I have given it to the Levites, the resident aliens, the orphans, and the widows, in accordance with your entire commandment that you commanded me. I have neither transgressed nor forgotten any of your commandments." Now, because I've read all the book of Deuteronomy before, I expect I've read this passage before, but something about it, I guess, didn't strike me then. But I think it's so interesting, this idea of taking the first fruit, your tithe, the first portion of whatever we make and giving it to God. That's something that I'm very familiar with. I've preached sermons on tithing and, giving to God. But what I find interesting in that chapter 26 of Deuteronomy is that these first fruits are not just for God. They're not just to be burnt on the altar. They are so that the widow and the orphan and the alien residing among you, so the person who's not of your, necessarily of your family or your clan or even your culture, who lives in your towns, so that the people who are in need, who maybe don't have a place to grow food for themselves, so that they might have enough. And not just enough to survive, so that they have enough to eat their fill, just as everyone else in that society. So this afternoon, I was helping with the food pantry, or not the food pantry, but the food distribution over at the Historical Society here in Malta. And what was interesting about that is a very large portion of what we gave away today was produce. And it's produce that's either been grown in people's gardens, or it's been grown in the various community gardens all over our county. It really is, in a sense, the first fruit of the produce. And we were giving people, onions and squash and cabbages and tomatoes and peppers and other things that grow this time of year in this part of the world so that they could eat. And the important thing about this particular food distribution is not only are they getting something to eat, they're getting something to eat that's actually fresh fruits and vegetables. Fresh fruits and vegetables that have the nutrients they need to stay healthy and that don't have the salt that canned vegetables do, and some other things like that. And it struck me the amazing connection between these passages. Deuteronomy was inspired by God probably more than 3,000 years ago. It was probably written down in its final form maybe 2,600 years ago. And there were people then, there were widows and there were orphans and there were aliens residing amongst people, and there were others who needed help because circumstances of life meant that they didn't have a way to provide for themselves, and yet they deserved to not just survive, but to eat their fill. And here we are in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and millions of people in our country are out of work, or they're not working as many hours as they once were, and there's a lot of need. The thing that broke my heart at the food distribution today is that we ran out of the fresh produce. The people who got there early got big bags of fresh fruits and vegetables, mostly vegetables. Unfortunately, by the end, there were people coming and they weren't getting as much of the fresh produce because it was all gone. By the end, all we really had left were onions, which are great, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same as giving someone a big bag full of all kinds of different fruits and vegetables. But the reality is that the problems that Deuteronomy was trying to address 2,600 years ago, people in need, still exist. And frankly, in this particular time of pandemic and economic crisis, it's a big need. So, some of you watching this may be some of the people who are in need. There's no shame in that. Please don't ever feel shame in that. Please don't ever feel shame at asking for help. Because one of the simple realities is that sometimes life is hard, and sometimes circumstances are beyond our control, and sometimes we need the help of others. And for those of us who are not currently in desperate need, what is it that we have to give? Maybe money, maybe some vegetables from our garden, maybe some time at the food distribution, maybe something else entirely. But how can we help meet the needs around us so that everyone doesn't just survive, but has their fill? Literally of food, of course, but also they have their fill and know that they are loved. They are loved by other human beings, and they are loved by God, who loved us so much that he sent God's Son, Jesus Christ, to be with us and to show us the way. So may we think of those who are in need and do what we can to help. I wish you peace this evening. I'll talk to you soon. God bless. Goodbye.